that's where that kind of blockchain decentralized system helps. The only worry I have right now is that with quantum computing, all of these like cryptocurrencies and blockchain hashes could be recalculated back and rewritten.
Hey, Anatolii, welcome to BloomX Podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Hello, Ravi. Thanks for inviting me.
Perfect. So, yeah, you're coming out of the legal innovation zone, if I'm not mistaken, with Paqt, your company.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we got to know legal innovation zone through Nafis, the previous manager there. He came on and talked a little about what's going on at the legal innovation zone. It's kind of cool to have an incubator that's focused on primarily on legal tech. Right? It's not something that you would regularly think about with technology, right? With lawyers and legality. But the more we talked to Nafis and talked to her about legal innovation zone, it made so much sense. The legal industry is literally pen and paper. Like it's literally, it's based on a very historical record of the legal system, which itself doesn't bend and change that easily. So to have technology being implemented to smoothen the process out is, I think, very interesting. So love to hear more about your startup and what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So at Paqt, we're building this new kind of thing, and you hit it exactly right on nail in the head, as they say, with everyone thinking that legal is like this big, boring piece of whatever it is. But if you think really well, it's those strings that connect all of the businesses and whatever happens in any business, specifically like agreements and contracts and deals and all of the arrangements. They have to operate in some kind of an operating system, right? Like the human societies have made this social contract, right? That would be agreeing to contracts, would be agreeing to deals, shaking hands, signing documents, and this is how we work. And then if something goes wrong, you go to court. And because of these legal systems, now everything else is enabled in commerce, right? Now you can enter into an agreement because there are sets of rules. So I wouldn't say it's actually boring. And if you flip like the perspective and actually think about it really well, it is actually very fun and very interesting. And indeed, Legal Innovation Zone is one of the few hubs in the world that supports this legal tech. And for the last 8 months, probably, legal tech has like accelerated probably 4 years ahead. So with COVID, with digitization, and with like this ongoing push for efficiency and push for like, keep doing the deals online. Like, even right now we're doing a podcast with you over the computer, right? So it's not the face-to-face experience, but still we have to adapt, and a bunch of businesses and owners and salespeople have to adapt to the legal requirements as well. And we at Paqt, we're building an agreement platform. So it's a combination of a professional chat, like a messenger, and a set of deal-making tools that help you along the deal-making process. So starting from negotiation, going into creating a document and easily negotiating it back and forth, then signing it, paying it, and then managing your relationship in the same chat. You could extract that thing, show it in court, and now because you have chat, you're super flexible, and now you could enter into deals by sharing photos, audio messages, videos. Like you could exchange a few audio messages like, hey, do you agree? Yeah, I agree. Yeah, sure. Okay, would you sell me it for this price? Yes, I will. And now you have a verified record of an oral contract, which meets specific criteria to be considered a contract. And now you can prove it because you have the evidence element of it. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make deal making fun. We're trying to make it enjoyable, and we're trying to make it quick, efficient, and still legally compliant.
Well, that's really interesting. So almost like a chat system, and that turns into a legal document?
Exactly. So you could consider a chat being the document, being the agreement. So it has a structure. You could prove it, and you have identified people, you have timestamps, you have dates, you have statuses, and you have the final approval saying, yes, I approve, or like, sure, let's proceed. And you could treat that as an agreement. Of course, we're starting a little bit more conservative, and we're adding easy to create like drag and drop contracts and documents. So like you could create a basic service agreement, upload it like your lawyer has produced it. You upload it into Paqt, And then you could share it, and it drops into the chat, and you see like that contract image there. You could open it up, you'll see the contract, you could sign it, you could negotiate it, like you'd highlight a sentence and click negotiate, and you would counter offer your term if you want to. Very intuitive, very easy. And then you reach to a final kind of decision, you sign it properly. But that's only the start. Like everyone thinks like, okay, legal is about contracts and documents and everything else. But the signature is just a moment between like building up trust and then actually executing what you've agreed upon, right? So the signature is just, it's like kicking off your relationship. And you have shipments, payments, warranty, liability, like upsells, cross-sells. You have a bunch of other legally and financially important interactions that you have to have somehow facilitate. And what happens right now? Well, you'll have a bunch of crazy scattered chains of emails, which you could die in. You would sometimes plug in your texts, calls, WhatsApps. Don't recommend doing it on WhatsApp for a bunch of purposes, for a bunch of reasons, but becomes a mess. And that's what we're trying to funnel down to a single platform, which is ready to go and easy to use.
Wow. I mean, that's really cool. I mean, I use contracts all the time, right? Like, especially having a sales background, it's one of the most annoying things because you can go and talk to a client, negotiate over the phone, in person, email, whatever it is, and then you have to take a break, move on to a different application, or go to a computer. I've made the modifications to the document, send it over to them, then they review it, and if they have any notes, they send it back. Or if they sign it, then they send it back. Then we sign it and send it back, right? And
exactly.
Then it's such a multi-stage process. It's one of the most annoying parts of the sales, right? Is the actual closing part of it. It's supposed to be the most funnest part, but it's so tedious because of the back and forth.
Exactly. You're just seeing through it. Why? Because it should be the funnest part, right? Like just the good old days when you had a nice quill and you're signing on this contract and you like your heart is beating and you're like, yes, I've signed this deal off finally, and you should be excited and like run and go execute whatever you've agreed upon. But now it's like, oh, finally I got it. Like, like with all of this delay and emails and like revisions. And the problem with revisions, it's actually not that obvious, but it's very interesting. I'll drill down into it a little bit. So everyone uses Word, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Word, you have those like revisions, you have red lines, you have edits. And then when you send it to the other party, they always have to use some kind of a software to compare that there are no tricks and that you haven't, edited anything. And lawyers come up with a bunch of different interesting mechanisms of how to compare all of those changes, especially when it's like multi-party communication, when it's like 5 people negotiating. Let's say it's like a five-party contract, right? That becomes ugly really quick. Yeah. And someone would say like, okay, but you have Google Docs, right? Google Docs is like online, it's quick, it's efficient. The problem is that lawyers don't share Google Doc links. Because if you share Google Doc link and enable the other party to edit, it's not that obvious where you have edited something, and you almost give them permission inside of your own territory. And that's why they keep sending PDFs and like Word documents back and forth. And that's why the whole ugliness of the negotiation process remains.
Yeah, and I've noticed this about lawyers too. I think that's a good explanation, is because they're very hesitant to use more technologies, like even like DocuSign or things like that. Like they just send PDFs. I always wondered about that. It's like, why? So I think that's a good clarification. So let's talk about where this came from. Like why the need to build this personally. Where the driving force come from?
Well, I'm a second-time founder. So I had originally I'm from Ukraine, and I moved to Canada probably like 5 years ago. I had like a startup back in Kyiv. It was an on-demand iPhone repair service. So I had a bunch of technicians who were visiting our customers and fixing the phones right in front of them. And probably 90% of my business I was doing in a messenger called Telegram. So it gets more and more popular these days. But when I came to Canada, and I was doing that while I was studying in 2 universities. So I graduated and then I moved to Canada, and I have ambitious plans about my future. That's why I'm looking for the next big thing. And I'm visiting all of these like legal tech hackathons. IT events. And on one of the hackathons, I met William, our legal co-founder.
Mm-hmm.
And we were thinking of building like this procedural optimization tool for civil litigation for like personal injury and stuff like that. Super boring, super hard to sell. And we decided not to go with it after we've evolved a little bit. But then we were crystallizing, and I think we've boiled down our experiences. So my experience of doing business online and through messengers, and William's kind of desire to keep optimizing the process of the legal and procedural things, and we just probably merged that. And I've experienced it, right? And when I was here in Canada, no one is doing business in WhatsApp because it's hard to prove. They steal your data, and it's just not a common thing to do. And we decided to go and create like a chat for business. And although we had this final concept in our minds, it was hard to express what a chat for business is and like what would you do with it. And people were always like asking questions. Okay, so how are you different from like Slack? How are you different from WhatsApp? Not understanding the core of it. And after reading a book from April Dunford about positioning, I was able to finally crystallize and create this concept, and I called it the agreement platform. So there's nothing like an agreement platform existing right now in the market. So there are amazing services like DocuSign's Agreement Cloud or PandaDocs or AirSlate, which are getting closer to this area, but they still don't have the communication element. They still don't have the chat, the flexibility, and they're reliant on heavy email processes, which still makes it ugly. They do, of course, automate and speed up specific parts of the agreement, like creating contracts and maybe negotiating a little bit, but not the whole experience. Yeah, and we're here like ideation, developed our demo, pitched, won some pitch events, went to Founder Institute last summer, graduated from it, became part of the Legal Innovation Zone. Now we have an advisory board, users in the wait list, LOIs signed, a bunch of validation, and like we do feel the problem better. So we've iterated, and now we have a new set of designs and like UX, UI, how it would look like. And I'm super passionate about finally making it happen, so start selling it and start giving it out to all of those founders who are struggling and try to make their life a little bit better.
Absolutely. I love that so much, like being able to ideate and iterate really quickly, test it out, get validation, and then move forward. I mean, that's classic, like standard, like lean startup kind of principles right there, right? How to just come up with come up with problem sets for solutions. I like this because, like, I mean, we see like two types of entrepreneurs, especially in the tech industry, right? One is the entrepreneurs who like get fascinated by a problem and they're like, I want to solve this. And others are more like, I just want to solve something. And they develop such principles and start testing it in the market. What can I solve? What can I solve? What can I solve? Right? We call it internally visionaries versus operators, right? Visionaries, they see, the mountaintop, they see what could be, and they're like drawn to it, and they go out and figure out the skill sets to develop it. Others, the operators develop the skill sets to solve problems, and then they go out and tackle problem sets. And that seems to be where you kind of lie on, where you just came across this problem, like, hey, let's go solve this. And you kind of come up with more novel ways of doing it. I love that journey so much. So let's talk about the team, right? So you and your co-founder, it's a legal co-founder. Is he a lawyer? Does he work in the legal industry?
Yeah. So we're actually three co-founders.
Okay.
So myself, I have more of like the marketing, financial, and overall strategic backgrounds. William, he is our legal co-founder. Yes, he is in civil law, and he's also has some experience with the commercial side of things. He was top of his class for Canadian tax income, and he was also in UFT, co-editor for some kind of a newspaper. And he's like really sharp for these like optimization. He's like an optimization geek. That's what I would say. Up to a minute, like lawyers. Come on, right?
Yeah.
But he's a fun lawyer, so he's not a boring one. And then our third co-founder is Slava. So he's my classmate actually from school, and he is a senior full stack developer. So he had some previous CTO experience, scaling infrastructure and building, like development teams. He somehow has a super skill of getting aligned with developers even better than me. So that's like his superpower, which is very great for, scaling and building dev teams. And he is a very critical thinker. So he helps us question everything and find extra triple proof for like, substantiating everything. It's just like, I just feel it that way, or like I know it doesn't work. You have to be like, so that's our team. Yeah, and then also have people helping us, like they're not full time, so we have designers, we have developers, we have a lot of supporters, we have advisors, but we're getting there. We're planning to grow quick.
Awesome, man. So you've been in operation about 2 years now, you said?
So we've started ideating and crystallizing it, and until we reached this like kind of final point where we decided, okay, we'll start to develop it. Took probably a year, and then we started developing the demo May 2019. So we built the demo environment, which is probably 60% of an MVP throughout 2019, and then 2020 we've refocused more on validating, iterating, talking with founders, and gaining this wait list and LOIs.
Yeah, I mean the iterative process is so crucial and yet so tedious, right? So there's a statement with Henry Ford that always sticks out, right? It's like, if I asked people what they wanted for transportation, they would have said a faster horse. So there's always this back and forth between innovation, right? It's like, do we build for the customer, or do we build for the problem and then find the customer for it after, right?
In our case, it's actually kind of funny. So it happened this way. We're like, we want to do a chat app for businesses. So we had that vision. We're like, we're just doing it. Was that right? Probably not, right? Like based on all of the theories and how you build businesses and companies and how do you, but I truly do believe that people sometimes don't even know what they want. And we had a lot of examples of how they're rare, but a lot of examples of how unique new products just totally change the behavior and how people use things, or how people do things. If I would have asked someone what they want, they would say probably like a faster email, right? In my case. And that's Superhuman. And Superhuman is an amazing product. It is like a super quick email, but I don't see the market going there, to be honest, in like 5 years, in like 10 years. Let's think, like, let's hypothesize. So you have a bunch of millennials right now jumping into the market for space, and after them the next generation, right? They're all like about chat. They're like Instagram, TikTok, Clubhouse is more for older people, but not Gen Z. But still, like the youngsters are all, my brother, for example, he's all in chats. Do you think they would be doing a lot of emails? Right?
No, yeah.
I mean, why would they need a faster email? Like, if they could chat their buddy and like, or like their business partner who is their buddy, and then they're grown up. So take another thing into consideration. Let's say VR, AR experiences. Okay, so you have these goggles on. You'd still need an interface to communicate something. So you need a chat window on the bottom left, just like in World of Warcraft or like any other kind of game, right? How would you communicate with people in virtual realities? Still, it's chat, it's voice, sure, but it's chat-based as well. Like, and then you're doing a virtual deal in a virtual boardroom with the goggles on, but you still need the script of the conversation to be stored somewhere. And that's where I believe like the grand future of Paqt would be, where we would be integrating, we'll build this infrastructure for the digital deal making, because email is not a tool for deal making. It's actually electronic letters. So you have a letter and you just do like an electronic copy of that with signatures and choosing parties each time, and then folding it in an envelope and then sending a pigeon with like an electronic bytes and bits there, and then the other party gets it, and each time you have to add the signature, and it's like a lot. It's not a message-based system. So the idea is that it's a letter-centric system compared to a more efficient message-based system. And we believe that there are also additional layers like KYC that you have to know who you're dealing with, right? Because you could register any email and pretend like, that's why there's a lot of email fraud online, right? That's why people are stealing money, pretending to be CEOs of the company, emailing to their accountant like, oh, do a wire payment right now to Hong Kong, and that's like $30 billion. I don't remember, but FBI has evaluated it being like a multi-billion-dollar problem, like a large one. That's why we're looking to wove in those legally necessary elements and security into the process, make it simple as a chat, and here you go. This is the infrastructure for deals and for like those important communication, not just chats for fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you gave a lot of interesting tidbits there. Like one, that was a really good explanation of emails and the limitations of that, because it was built on like that archaic kind of knowledge, right? Like we think of innovation as like lasers and moving things at light speed and everything's being like like super sci-fi, but in reality everything kind of builds upon its upon like older iterations, right? Like literally the paper, pen and paper letters was digitized into email, right? Mail becoming email, electronic mail, and then messaging becoming more instantaneous communication. um, right, so talking about that, like KYC and AML, right, got really popular and digitized really well during the blockchain revolution, right? Like one of the tidbits of in 2017, and blockchain got super popular, right? It didn't go as far as like everyone dreamed it did, but out of that process came the capability to do AML and KYC in a much more efficient way. There's a whole bunch of companies came outward with like plug and play algorithms that can go through databases and do these kind of things, right? So how does that message blend with a chat app? Because part of like what people use with chats is like you want to be ethereal, right? Like WhatsApp now, everyone's moving to Signal because WhatsApp's being cracked open and now your data's being poured out into Facebook. People don't like that. Millions of people move to Signal because okay, we want to be secured and almost have like like control over our data systems, right? But even then, you can set up a new phone line, a phone signal, and suddenly have a new chat app. You can change your name, you can change your profile picture, you can change who you are and become become a different person. So taking that kind of concept and applying to chat, it's like, no, this is who I am, who I say I am. How's that been in a user behavior kind of training sense? Like, do people want or are driven by the idea of like, hey, this is who I am, say I am, and then I can communicate to other people who say they are? Like, you're creating a closed ecosystem almost, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. So there are some cases where you want to stay private. Like you want to be super private and chat with your friends, your family, your networks about everything pretty much, and not be scanned through by the owner of the platform, right? That's what like it should be, and that's why Signal is getting big, and kudos for them, right? There are some, on the other side, there are some times where you want to be identified. Let's say you are communicating with your government, right? And then you're getting this prolongation of your driver license, or you are entering into an important deal, a contract. You want to be identified there on the contract itself, right? You want to be clearly stated and the other party is stated. So now you are entering into this deal because it's a big deal. It's like $50,000, $100,000, or like even you're buying a used, I don't know, car for 5,000. Still, it's important. So for those cases, you want to be identified to avoid fraud, legal uncertainty, financial uncertainty for regulations and inspections, and just for personal record. What we are trying to do with Paqt is get that concept of super security and marry it with like being identified, but only when you need to disclose it, right? So you enter into an agreement in the chat, both parties could extract that. And then if something goes wrong or right, or you have an audit, or you have a dispute or whatever, you could extract that and you could then show it to the court, right? Or would create like a instant connection that it automatically gets downloaded, formed into some kind of a visualized version for the court for like small claims or for larger claims, and gets filed there. I do believe in like security and like privacy, so I'll be trying my best to incorporate that as the essential piece of the product. And our business model is actually not an ads-based and like attention-based business model. So we wouldn't be pinging you whenever like we want, just to get you inside to earn an extra buck. It'll be a subscription model, and we would also have probably like a commission from payment. So if you cover your contracts, we would enable you a payment processing option, and basically we might charge like a micro percentage out of that. That's the idea. And yeah, I think, does that answer what you're asking?
No,
And then
Sorry, go ahead.
The additional thing, yeah. So like, how does it marry that like people are, perceiving chat as not very serious sometimes, right? But we see this tendency, this evolution of chatting. First of all, your personal communication went probably from like Skype and Hotmail to WhatsApp, right? Then your intra-team communication with your like colleagues and co-founders went from email to Slack, right? Or like Microsoft Teams or Skype for Business or any other kind of chat platform. And then the third section, which is like external communication, hasn't gone to chat, and we want to kind of bridge that gap. And we do see a pattern of people getting more and more used to chatting, and we do believe that it's more efficient and it's easier when there's like 10 people involved in the deal. Yeah, and that's why we're kind of blending it all together.
I love that. That's interesting because it's segmenting not people but use cases, right? What people use communications for. So I want to talk more about that closed ecosystem because I think what you're building is pretty important for people to transact virtually is the next thing, right? Because think about like even with like other tools like Facebook Marketplace right now is probably one of the greatest marketplaces ever invented. Like there's so much traction. Like me and my wife are on that all the time, buying and sell things, items. It's so ethereal because you can put up something and it gets in front of so many eyeballs that you get so much attention for it and you can liquidate things really quickly. But the issue with that is you can't transact. Facebook try to fix its solution with like its own crypto coin that it didn't end up going through. But even then, you don't really know who you're interacting with, right? So this problem is like, hey, how can you truly interact with yourself? Like, yeah, we can have like one of the best things right now is probably LinkedIn because you can go on someone's LinkedIn, as long as they have a certain amount of connections, that they're not fake because they're everyone in the database is saying that hey, this person really does exist. That's why I'm connected to them. See their work history. You can qualify them as a person, almost do like your almost informal KYC, right? But like again, you can't transact directly off any one platform, right?
I'll tell you a funny story, man, about LinkedIn. There was this story so like I got approached by a person. So actually there is like a specific percentage of people on LinkedIn being actually fake. Like the only true thing is their photo, but like their whole history is just like made up, like ex-Google, like triple times Apple. No, that's very obvious, but like you have some compelling profiles sometimes. A Stanford graduate, and then like, he's just done all of this, and then he's a founder in virtual media experience agency, and then something else. So I got this funny story when a guy approached me, and then he's like, yeah, well, I have this business idea. I have to catch up for a beer or something. And I'm typically open, right? So I'm like, I'm trying also to give back. Like I'm asking a lot right now at this stage, at like the pre-seed, kind of pre-revenue stage. I probably have more people helping me than me helping them because we have to bring it up. But when I have an opportunity, I'm trying to as well, right? Like get in touch, chat with them. So I was like, okay, let's go and chat with you. And basically I got trapped in like an MLM kind of meeting, and they're trying to sell you something. And this guy had like his experience. He was like a consultant at a solid IT consultancy here in Toronto, which I know, and then like something else. And then he's like an analyst as well. I'm like, should be like real deal, right? Like, so when you're saying that like, typically 90%, you're right. Like LinkedIn would be true people with their real experiences.
Oh, I'm not saying it's nowhere near perfect. Absolutely, there's a lot of fakes on there. But what I'm saying is, right now, that's what you have available to you.
That's right. No,
commercially available. Yeah.
Kijiji, like think of Kijiji, right? That's like the second best marketplace after Facebook's marketplace, right? Because Facebook outgrown Kijiji because of the reach, right? And like the speed, and you could promote your marketplace posting and just like get a bunch of people reacting to it. But then you don't know, right? You're exactly right. You don't know who's on the other side. Let's imagine you're buying like a used phone, right? And the person like, yeah, it's never locked, never repaired, brand new, sealed in a box, super good, $1,000. You're meeting with this person somewhere in like Dundas Square, and they give you the box, you give them the money, you come home, you like if like you should always be testing your phones. That's number one advice from me. But like if you didn't that, you're opening it up and there's a brick, and then the guy disappeared and you can't reach him back and you're out of your 1,000, right? Or something more realistic. You actually buy a solid iPhone, but then it occurred that it had water damage, it was 3 times repaired, and it's just like stopped working in a few days. If you have had the other person identified, and them being clearly stating that the phone is brand new, never repaired, all good, you could enforce your interaction, and at least you could like threaten them to sue them, or actually go to small claims and get the money back, right? So this filters out the tricksters and like the fraudsters from the people who really want to sell and enter into this like second-hand economy, which is huge. It's growing, like all of these used things, and now they could sell at a premium because people know that they're true and that they're like liable and that they're identified. So now instead of selling your phone for 1,000, you could sell it for 1,100 compared to like 1,300 retail, because that's the premium that you get for being like true, authentic, right? So that's another thing.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the idea, like the idea of a marketplace where everyone is transacting is authenticated or verified. I think that is so key, right? Because I mean, that's how you move. Like that economy itself will be self-serving, like trustworthy, right? Like I think you called it perfectly by saying it's a premium service almost, because I know who the person interacting can't screw me because they're verified, and if they do, I at least have a way to like notify everybody else or identify who the person is or enforce a contract even better, right? So let's talk about the contracting capability. Has messaging services been used in court? You could, I know in like maybe in criminal courts and stuff like that, it'd be used as evidence, but in like litigation, like maybe in like a more corporate sense or in a more enforcing a contract sense, has there been case examples of messaging being used in court to defend something?
That's an amazing question. So the short answer is yes. There are attempts of using messaging as evidence. And then when you start digging into it, you start to get to feel and appreciate how old school the legal systems are. So what happens is you have to print out the screenshots of the chat messages to actually show them. And then if there were cases I've seen online where court declined chat messaging because the other party had a good lawyer and they said it's hearsay, you could have changed it, and they deleted all of the messages on their side, so you cannot verify it, or like you could screw it up 100 different times. That's why services that like archive WhatsApp communications started to arise. But like, who actually uses that? Like, do you use an archiving tool for your WhatsApp communication, right? You typically don't. So actually proving the point that you have transacted on a chat app is very tough. And a lot of applications still don't have the proper extract function. And moreover, if they have, it's still uncertain. It's just like it probably might be like a username, or if it's linked to a phone, okay, that's better. But then it just becomes super complex, and it's comparable to emails. But with emails and like corporate commercial courts, you could drag in and roll in like a TV screen. This is how they do it. Well, based on what they told me, and they could open up like an email account, and they can open up a message and actually show it in court. Like you probably wouldn't be like just unlocking your phone and, hey, judge, take a look at my phone here. That's probably not the way how it works.
Yeah.
So there were a few moving elements in the mechanism that made it super complex. Now, with COVID and like with digitizing all of this, now electronic evidence is getting more and more used, and we see a pattern of like electronic evidence being used better. So now we have made the job of the judge and like everyone involved easier by providing a really easy to follow, identified set of evidence with like timestamps and everything kind of aligned there. Just like you could extract it in a click and send it over, and then that's pretty much it. So yeah, so there's a bunch of interesting cases when chat messages were rejected and were not accepted as evidence. And there were cases when they were accepted. It depends on the jurisdiction, it depends on the lawyers, and depends on their battles, and it's all messy.
That's pretty interesting. So like based off of this, like from your legal co-founder's kind of perspective, like how does he see this being utilized in court? Let's say someone makes an agreement through your application through Paqt, and then like you have a pact now to I just got the name, by the way. That's actually great. Right? Pact with a Q. So once you have once you come into a pact, right? And you have a contract in place, you agree, you sign off on it, right? How would the extraction procedure work if someone, it's like, defraud somebody, or like they need to sue somebody, or they need to pursue more aggressive action? What would stages look like?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So we have this concept called chat extract. So a chat extract is a small button on the bottom right which you click, and it extracts the full sequence of your communication of this specific chat. So it extracts the parties, it extracts the timestamps, like when the message was sent, read, viewed. So it extracts it as a website. So it's a folder, and there's an HTML file, and you can click on it, and it would open in any browser, and you could see the chat history as if you were signed into Paqt.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And then you could download all the documents, you could download all the photos, you can download all of the audios, you could read it. And there's a second button called server log. You click on it and you get the full server log. So the opposite from WhatsApp, what they're doing, they're like, we won't disclose it to anyone, and you have to die before you get it, or you have to be like the top FBI guy there, and you have to investigate something really, really bad to get access to that, because WhatsApp doesn't give you server logs. Good luck going there and getting that. They wouldn't, right? They just don't have the facility for it. But what we are doing, we're building it by design that if you need it for your business dealings, you could extract it, and then you could go in court and present it. And that's like in an easy bundle, like a zip file or like a folder. You go into it, you open the HTML file, and it opens in the browser. Moreover, we plan to attach blockchain stamps to that extract. So with time, so we're building this the hashing process inside, where your daily communication or like moments of truth, let's say when you signed a contract, would trigger an event which would create a hash, and that hash would be posted on a public blockchain, like Ethereum or like EOS, right? And then you have in your extract those hashes. So now you have a double degree proof that those messages weren't altered by a hacker on the back end. So let's say you have $100 million deal and you're selling like Leonardo da Vinci's painting, and you said like, yeah, I agree for $100 million. And then a hacker went in and trolled everyone and just changed that to a no. That's what could happen on WhatsApp. So on WhatsApp right now, different intelligence agencies could hack into your phone through spamming. That was like a vulnerability found back in the day, through spamming like the video call option, have access to all of your contacts, all of your messages, and they could change the messages, they could delete the messages, they have full control over that. And that's where that kind of blockchain decentralized system helps. The only worry I have right now is that with quantum computing, all of these like cryptocurrencies and blockchain hashes could be recalculated back and rewritten. So I don't know if cryptocurrencies, maybe I'm saying something really stupid here, but how I understand it is that like you have mathematical processes involved in each blockchain, right? And they're cryptographic, which you kind of hash each block and attach it one to another. And because it's distributed, you could do a lot of computations, and you kind of cannot backtrack it with existing computers. But what if you have like a super duper quantum computer that could do that in a second? Yeah. And then it rewrites the ownership for all of the Bitcoins to this one specific guy. So that's something that I'm kind of worried about, but still, like, we'll see when we get there.
Yeah, I mean, it is a problem with the blockchain community, right? Like the quantum computing back and forth. Like, is this for modern day output? Like, this is super secure. But even with like Bitcoin, I mean, Bitcoin can be modified. Its crypto hash is super secure now for nowadays computing standards, and it will be off the progression of like how we think computing will get for the next 20 years. What happens after that? What happened, like you said, like there's a sudden revolution, and suddenly there's a huge increase in like the level of computation capabilities, and then boom, it gets beyond there. So yeah, I think there's definitely some merits to that kind of conversation. But I mean, what I like about your solution is it doesn't rely on blockchain. You know, like most blockchain
no,
technologies
yeah.
are like gimmicky because they're not really that efficient or quick, right? I like the HTML output because then that way it's almost like you have a live reader that you can click through and actually see it almost as it's happening real time. So let's talk about like use cases. Like, is this available right now? Is people using it? Are you testing it out? What stage are you at?
Yeah, great question. So we have a demo environment, and the demo environment enables us to prove the concept with founders and just jump in and test it for fun. And we have significantly evolved during this summer. So we have evolved from having like our micro agreements called like mini pacts or whatever, right? And we evolved to like having a document editor where you could come up with your own version of any document, like an invoice, a quote, a contract, anything else. It's just drag and drop. It's pretty basic, but it would cover most of the needs. And we're mainly focusing on contracts and NDAs and like master agreements, services, like all of that stuff. But still, you're able to throw in a small table and do like a mini invoice probably. That's what we need kind of to get to. And we are not selling it to anyone, and we're not allowing anyone to use it for commercial purpose. So my thinking is the following. I could have done that. I said like, oh, it's 100% secure, right? It's on AWS, and that's true. We're using AWS infrastructure, and like we have thought of a bunch of things, but commercial communication is different from just like sending memes to each other. You know what I mean? I want to be 100% sure, and I want to do at least set us on the trails and the tracks for SOC compliancy, right? Probably SOC 2, and start kind of working in that way. That's why we are looking for funding right now to close the cybersecurity gap that I see, evolve the contract creation flow, and implement like the UX UIs that we've developed throughout the summer. So we are not selling it. It's not available for usage right now. We have run it through and used it to prove the concepts and like the logic that it works and that people want it. And some people are like super excited about it. But we would probably launch it closer to the end of the summer. So from what I see it right now, like try to do the fundraise, the pre-seed, the angel round. We would then boost up our talent a little bit. And then we would finish up the first iteration of it, which would be like the first commercial grade version of it that like we could give out to SMBs. We will onboard people from our waitlist and from our LOIs to start using it. We would iterate on their feedback, polish it, make it fly, no bugs, super quick. People love it, and that's where we do the official. That will be like the pilot or like the beta version of it, the closed limited beta. And then would be enabling it to all other users, probably also in like waves of beta, limited access beta, or a more active outreach. I don't know. At this point of time, we'll try to make it a little bit viral, and maybe like an invite only. I don't know. We'll see.
That's interesting. Like, can you talk about the compliance issues, SOC compliance, and what that means?
Yeah. So. The cybersecurity world is actually very funny, and you might be amazed how many tools you're using that are stating they're super cyber secure, but they're not. So there's this two camps of cybersecurity. The first camp is policies and procedures and compliancy and like meeting the regulatory requirements. And typically you would need that if you're selling to a large enterprise, right? You would go to like a large Canadian bank and ask them like, oh, we have this new tool, you want to use it? They're like, sure. Here's like an 80-page requirement document that you have to sign off before we could even take and test it. And a lot of check marks are like, do you have this? Like, yes. Do you have like a policy? Yes. Okay, sure. And then you go through it, and a lot of times you just kind of go through it, prepare all the documents, kind of think of the processes and how you would report and react to incidents, and you're kind of good, and you start selling to the businesses. And there's a second camp of like the actual true hackers who could like destroy the app with like a few commands, right? And that's where we're trying to balance off and kind of merge the both. So the SOC compliancy is have to have regular like policies, procedures, bunch of documentation, and then you have to do a penetration test, and then you have to audit that. So auditors come in, review your documents, review the penetration test results, and kind of make a sign off saying, yeah, it's SOC compliant. So SOC compliance is also like an arbitrary thing. There's no one unit or one body in the world that would issue that you are cyber secure. No one can say that, so it's kind of vague. But my main focus is actually getting like white hat hackers to jump in, test it out, destroy it, find loopholes, and get us working in the direction of closing those. Maybe like hackathons and all of those fun events when even how Telegram does it. They have these competitions where they give some monetary benefits for people that try to just destroy the app or find loopholes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm familiar with this. Like there was a company that came through the podcast before that talked about this, right? So they launched like purposeful like assault on their application. It's a company called New Vote. They do election technology. So if you can imagine, election technology is you have to be time and tested. And he actually got some of the experts, the people who like the greatest deniers of elections to try to hack and penetrate the system and tested it and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And one by one, just got them to say like, hey, this is great. This actually works. This system works. And he turned the naysayers into now champions of his product, because they're like, everyone else is like, we're not sure about and we're reluctant about, but this we tested and we're like, hey, this is great, right? So I think it's a wicked way of like taking disregarding the naysayers or even converting the naysayers into your side, right? So what would that look like? Who would you go to for this? Would you go to like a university program? Are there like private companies that do this kind of service? Like what would this look like?
You mean the actual process of like trying to convert people who might be skeptical into
As in, like, test your system out for vulnerabilities or.
Oh, yeah. Well, would be open to a bunch. So basically, there are agencies that are offering cybersecurity as like a service,
like
right?
audits, yeah.
Yeah, and they have teams of like those developers and kind of ethical hackers who penetrate and do that. We'll just like shortlist a few. Moreover, we have a unique opportunity of scaling talent globally these days. So probably would find a few also interesting people in Ukraine who might be trying to penetrate it. And then we're also I'm like reviewing these events. We have one of our supporters. His name is James, and he is a founder of like a drone company called Terra Nova Defense. And basically, they're building this community for cybersecurity, TCU Alliance. So basically, they're trying to gather experts in cybersecurity, service providers, and build this up. So I'm a follower of theirs, and I'm visiting those events, and I'd keep doing that, and hopefully they're going to be growing and evolving, and we might have access to all of these top firms as well later on.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a unique place to be in, right? Like here you go, you build this thing out, and now it's like, okay, I need people to break this, break it for me, and see what happens. It's always a unique starting point to look at a company from that point of view. But cool. Like, what's next for you guys? How's Legal Innovation Zone been? Are you sticking around there for a while? Are you going to look for other incubators? What's going on next?
Yeah. Well, we are so. Back last year, to backtrack it a little bit, we went through Founder Institute, and I was kind of skeptical about it at the first point in time, and I wasn't sure if we should go there or no. But I just did a leap of trust because Sunil was the director for Founder Institute, and Sunil Sharma, he is the director of Techstars Canada as well. And I was like, okay, well, that couldn't be bad if he's on board. And indeed, like I've discovered all these wonderful people who are organizing it, a bunch of mentors. It's a large community. So we went through that kind of incubation / kind of acceleration process there, developed a lot of things. And now, yes, we've jumped into the Legal Innovation Zone. The guys are very helpful. You have access to other legal tech founders. So you could reach out to them, chat with them, build relationships. Like it's a community. Unfortunately, now with COVID, you're not able to actually physically mingle with them in their space, like the actual Legal Innovation Zone. So that's unfortunate. We're looking towards that, but yeah, we're probably wouldn't be looking for any accelerators that have like the standard program that would kind of go again through like customer development and building a deck and then doing everything, because we went through that. But we're looking on a few very interesting accelerators that might offer you like business development and growing networks as the acceleration. So they would actually find people who would help you build the business and like go reach out to large corporations or go and reach out to angels to like build up your network for the fundraising efforts, or do something else. And currently we're in the funding lab, which is like the second stage of Funder Institute, which is a structured program to help you fundraise. So they've been instrumental to help us prepare all of the background that we needed, like the data rooms, pitch decks, and like the structure, and build up basically a strategy of fundraising, like what is an angel investor, right? And what they think and what they what their approach is like, and how do you approach an angel investor, and that you follow up with over and additional data, and that you don't want to be talking too much, right? You just want to be strict up to the point without over kind of boring them because they see hundreds and hundreds of pitches, and how do you stand out, right? So these kind of questions. So afterwards, I think I'm quite optimistic about our efforts. We've did a lot. We did a bunch of homework, have a lot of supporters, a lot of advisors, and I'm very truly thankful to all of them. Without them, this wouldn't have happened. It's all about like the community in the end of the day. This is funny, like, right? You would think like, oh, this guy is building the thing. No, it's like everyone else is building the thing, and this guy is trying to somehow manage like what's going around. Right? Like it's like people are everything, and in the end of the day, it's people who are building things for other people, and it's people who help other people get results and get to that next level. So yeah, so that's where we're at. And that's what would be trying to build up a even more solid team, and then just make a hurricane in the contracts market, and let everyone know that it's not only about the documents and the signatures. Just like let's go beyond that. Let's finally get into the 21st century and have the flexibility of deal making. Just like record a video as part of your agreement, attach a photo. Okay, it's time. Now is the time.
Yeah. No, I love the vision. I love the product. As I said before, as a salesman, I would 100% use something like this. I'm looking forward to it coming out. Let us know, and we'll do our best to promote it as well. We might even end up using it. It seems very tactful and very timely, meant for the times. But I really like one of the things you just said right now. This is what this is. It's startups, right? It's people building things for people, right? And I like the iterative process you're doing this. When you're ready to test, sign us up. I would love to take a look. But Anatolii, man, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey.
Amazing. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a big pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to new podcasts, opportunities, and chats. Maybe we'll launch, I'm looking at this Clubhouse thing. Maybe I would launch like a daily deal maker room or a club or something there, and try gather a lot of people who are in sales, who are these frequent deal makers, and like who are signing deals, striking them, and just their heads are exploding. Try to build a community out of there. So maybe if that would happen, maybe I would try and invite you guys as well to jump in and share your perspective on the sales side. So yeah, thank you so much.
For sure. Definitely. Stick around for a few minutes. We'll do a quick debrief. And for everyone else who stuck around, this is Anatolii with Paqt. Thanks, guys.